Welcome into the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson. Sam is fired up for today's episode. He thinks you guys really brought it from a mailbag edition here, from an email perspective this week. Is that right, Sam?
Well, look, today we have Steve pronouncing things, and that is possibly my favorite podcast segment that we ever do.
Other than that, you think our emailers crept back toward average?
I think some of them definitely crept back towards average. There was some lackluster emails this week, but it was a short week. It's like the Thursday NFL games. It's going to produce some substandard sloppy football, and that's what we got this week.
Plus, it's Thanksgiving week. We've all mailed it in. A short week for the podcast mailbag, and we had some sloppy mail. We're all just trying to get through. Before we get into the whole deal, this is your first American Thanksgiving.
Yes.
What are you doing? What is happening? What?
Grading games.
So it's like you never left Ireland.
Yes, exactly the same, except they're earlier in the day now.
You're not going to celebrate our glorious holiday?
I'll be celebrating by grading Eli Manning and the Giants. Isn't that what you guys do over here?
Yes, I eat turkey and enjoy my
I can eat turkey while I'm grading
family.
Eli.
You're going to be all by yourself, aren't you?
A little bit.
This is so sad. If you guys have a place for Sam to go on Thanksgiving, podcasts at profootballfocus.com. Invite him to your house. He's just looking for a place to go. He's lamenting all week how his family's heading back to Ireland, leaving him, and he needs a place to go for Thanksgiving. Sorry, Sam.
Thanks.
So sad. Yeah. All right, ready to go?
Yes.
All right. Hey, guys, after last week's Elway conversation, I wanted to know if you guys thought if PFF player grades are a good way to evaluate a GM's draft picks. If so, who would be the best GM? Second, I have a proposed rule change. Would love your opinion. That's the one we really want to get into.
Yeah.
Allow more contact down the field between defensive backs and wide receivers. It would be a better indicator of how athletic or skilled players are versus how acrobatic your cornerback is. Big fan. Love the pod, especially new Thomas Joneses. Please bring back new Thomas Joneses.
That's a good call. We haven't done Thomas Joneses in a while.
What was the Thomas Joneses again? The most average of everything?
No. Thomas Jones was basically the human offensive line calibration tool.
Oh, the calibration.
Thomas Jones would get exactly the yardage that was blocked and no more.
Right.
No more at all. So it was but he would get what was there every single play. You know, there are guys that take the wrong gaps, don't read the blocking right, make a mess of where they're going, and don't get as much as is actually blocked.
Right.
Thomas Jones would get exactly what was blocked and no more every single play. So the Thomas Joneses was, coming up with guys that will get exactly what is there and no more. And you could do it with wide receivers. I think we had some wide receivers that were Thomas Joneses. We haven't done Thomas Joneses
who's
in a while.
the most standard average of everything, pretty much?
Well, not just average, but will get you what is schemed and nothing more.
Gotcha. So that's from Julian Burwell from Colorado, USA. The GM one, we did not take the time to look up yet, but we do have some pieces on the on the site that have broken down the best draft picks in recent years. And I do think using player grades is a pretty good indicator of how well guys have drafted.
The contact and coverage thing is the thing I want to talk about a bit, though, because there are games now that are essentially officiated completely differently from others. You get games where if there's any kind of contact whatsoever in coverage, there's a flag coming out one way or the other. And then you get games like the Sunday night football game this week between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, where it became pretty clear early in that game that they weren't going to call anything.
Yeah, so just be physical. And
so at that point, the good defensive backs kind of realize that that's going on pretty early and go, okay, it's one of those games. The gloves come off. They're going to hold every single play. And, I mean, technically they're against the rules, but it's more fun that way. When you see wide receivers and defensive backs physically going at it downfield in routes, it's more fun than when they're not allowed to touch each other at all. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so there is this element of if we trying to keep wide receivers and defensive backs, just holding them to the same standard. And that is a struggle every single week. Yeah. When you see the same exact play and this should have been PI and this wasn't PI and this is a makeup call PI and defensive hold and all these different things, there is this element where defensive backs have to adjust to the officiating crew, not only what they see early in the game, but just historically. You go into games saying these guys throw flags, these guys don't, and you adjust accordingly. It's kind of like the debate in baseball about having no umpires, just having
Yeah,
the
self-officiating.
automatic strike zone. You can't really do that in football, but if you opened up the physicality, would that even the playing field a little bit?
Well, some of the best one-on-one wide receiver cornerback matchups in recent years have been ones where they're just allowed to go at it. If you think of Richard Sherman versus Brandon Marshall, was it last year or the year before? Those two just went at it physically, and it's so entertaining to watch. Now, technically speaking, pretty much every play in that game was a penalty of some description.
Right.
But they just went, no, we're going to let it happen. And it didn't. Nobody came out of that game lamenting the lack of penalty flags between the two of them. Richard Sherman didn't come out of that game saying, well, there should have been 4 offensive pass interference plays, or Brandon Marshall going, yeah, there was holding on, these half dozen. They just got on with it, and it was one-on-one, and it was awesome. That should happen more.
Let them be physical and make it look like a basketball game, rebounding.
I think as long as it is a physical competition, let them go at it. As long as it's not one guy basically beating up on the other guy and not being called for it. Like if both guys are going at it over the course of the game, I say let them get on with it.
The bigger thing I would add, I just don't want to reward quarterbacks for underthrown terrible passes. That's what I would like to see. So that is the play where like the cornerback isn't looking at the ball and it's like, oh, you could look at the ball, and he's playing the man and he kind of runs into the receiver and it's this terrible throw that like hits him in the back.
Yeah,
I don't want that to be pass interference anymore. So maybe open up the physicality just to avoid that. All right, next question. It comes from Sweden. This is Phil. This is our second Swedish email. Is that right, Taylor? That's made it to the podcast? Number 2.
Phil doesn't sound like a very Swedish name.
Yeah, neither does the Irish guy later.
Well, that's true. But the last Swedish name we had required, like, Wikipediaing pronunciation. I mean, we can master Phil.
Yeah, I got this.
Even you.
Greetings from Sweden from Phil. I'll just sum up the question. It's a longer question. Basically, the Minnesota offensive line is getting a lot of credit locally in Minnesota and in Sweden, apparently.
And in Sweden.
For just not allowing a whole lot of sacks. And while that is absolutely true, the question is how much of their quote-unquote success has to do with Case Keenum and his ability to handle the rush. And I'll just answer this quickly before you can maybe discuss it a little bit further. We've cited the number that I think sums that up, and that is Case Keenum's sack percentage under pressure, the best in the NFL, at 4.2%. Next lowest is Phillip Rivers at 8.7%, and the league average is right around 18%. And that is the percentage of pressured snaps, not total snaps, the percentage of pressures that turn into sacks. The actual pressure percentage for Case Keenum, 37.6%. That is 6th highest in the NFL at our 50% filter.
Yeah.
If you have PFF Elite, and it's a little bit lower. It's 11th highest in the NFL at our 25% filter, meaning he's facing pressure, but it's him. Give him credit for not taking sacks.
Yeah. But that offensive line has gotten dramatically better. I think it's crept back towards average. I think it may even be slightly above average when it comes to pass protection. You are destroying the podcast closet.
I knocked down
sticky notes falling off the walls.
I knocked down my creep back toward average.
This season they have the 8th best pass blocking efficiency number as an offensive line. Last season they were 23rd. Last season, in the entirety of the year, they gave up 198 total pressures, which is a pretty huge number. This year, they're way shy of that. Even when you consider the year taken on, they're only at 90. So last year they had 108 more pressures over the course of the season that they currently have through 11 weeks of the season. So it's a better offensive line. It's better in pass blocking. It's definitely improved. And you have Case Keenum doing a really good job of mitigating the pressure that they do allow on him.
Yeah.
The end.
That's it. Good job, Case Keenum. All right, next one. Dear fellow tall guy and his leprechaun sidekick. That's you, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Greetings from the depressed state of Nebraska. Love the pod.
It is depressing in Nebraska.
Do we add Nebraska to the list? I've legitimately listened to every one you guys have put out. I've often got nothing better to do with the Huskers being in the tank like they have been. It must be sad in Nebraska.
It's very sad.
When you're just all about Nebraska football and they're bad.
I told you that I drove through Nebraska a few years ago, and if you look, this was back in the days before GPS on the phone. I was working from a legitimate paper, A to Z. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, Z.
A to Z. And if you look at Nebraska, the interstates, They literally just grid it up. There's like 4 going north to south and 3 going east to west. And it's like somebody decided, well, we've got to put roads through this place. But what is the fewest number we can get away with to just make it so that you can get across the state?
Isn't that every state in the Midwest?
More Nebraska than most states. It's definitely getting that way the further out that way you go. But yeah, Nebraska, it just looks like somebody's gone, what's the minimum number of roads we can put on this place just to get from one side to the other?
It's a long state to drive through. Anyway, he's got one single question for us. From an individual player grade perspective, what was the most lopsided PFF has ever graded so far, excluding garbage time if possible? Put another way, what is the largest average player grade difference between 2 teams and their starting 22? Keep up the good work. Duran McCraver?
I was just taking a look at that name and wondering if it was a typo, if
Duran.
that's actually his name.
I mean, it could be Dylan. It's Dylan with an R instead
That's
of
what
an
I
L.
mean, yeah. So it's D-Y-R-A-N.
You think he misspelled his own name?
I've never encountered that as a name. That's not to say it isn't a name. I'm just wondering.
So we had Phil from Sweden.
Yes.
Duran, we think.
Possibly.
From
Nebraska.
Another one of my fans, apparently.
Yeah.
As you're the leprechaun sidekick. All right, so we had the analytics team dig deep for this one, and we have multiple answers. We don't have a clean, perfect answer, but we have multiple answers. Here are some from our analytics guys. 2007, New England Patriots and Buffalo Bills in Week 11. I believe that was the Sunday night game. Brady threw 4 first half
The
touchdowns.
Patriots had 2 2007 games on this list. That was the season that they were running up the score on people.
They were just playing football,
The
and
Washington
teams could
game.
not stop them.
The Week 8 Washington game. That was the one where I genuinely thought they were running up the score
they may
on
have been
people.
going empty on 4th down, late in the game, up about 50.
That was the one where they were taking the piss.
Okay, so they that was one of the games, New England
Yep.
and Washington. There was also the 2009 Week 6 New England versus Tennessee game, and this was Week 6 of the season, snowstorm in New England. Brady threw 6 touchdowns, 5 of which came in the second quarter, if I remember, for an NFL record. And I'm pretty sure Vince Young threw for like -2 yards in that game, or the Tennessee Titans threw for negative yardage in that game because they took sacks and they couldn't complete passes. They were just shocked by having snow in New England in October, mind you. So that was crazy. The 2011 Colts-Saints game, that was Sunday Night Football. That was Curtis Painter going up against Drew Brees
Curtis Painter.
in an absolute beatdown. It was 2010, Week 7, Raiders at Denver. Any others that stand out here?
No, I don't. I only remember like one of those games. The rest of them have all become a big blur.
I have good recall, Sam.
Yeah?
Also, 2010, Jets at New England. That was Week 13, Monday Night Football game, 45-3, where they absolutely demoralized the Jets, but then the Jets came back to beat New England in the playoffs. That was just a few weeks removed. So that was a good comeback by the
Rings
Jets.
a bell,
after
all right.
that. Any other good ones here?
No.
No, not
We're
really.
done.
No, so those are all games. A lot of New England games in there.
Yes.
Thanks, Duran, we think. Sam, please make Steve read this email. Sam is better. Sam is better. Sam is better. Sam is better. This is bad podcasting.
Hold on, because you're reading them so
Sam is
slow.
better. Sam is better. Okay,
Seems
great.
like a failing of you rather than the email.
This is a bad email. I agree with you that Tyrod is good enough that you can win with him, and with a great supporting cast, you might be able to challenge what looks like a weak AFC other than New England and Pittsburgh. But having said that, the Bills have a questionable supporting cast right now and seem to be determined not to commit to winning with Tyrod. Peterman's start was ugly, and it looks like the team knows fans can't stomach another performance like that. Would it be crazy to go with Joe Webb for the remainder of the season? He doesn't make many plays within the structure of the offense, but he can make big, exciting plays and at least keep the fans entertained until the team shops for quarterbacks in the offseason. Sorry, Steve. Phillip. For what? What am I apologizing? Why is he apologizing to me?
For making you read out that Sam is better 5 times.
Well, yeah. Well,
I assume.
don't be a jerk next time, Phillip.
Joe Webb at quarterback. That has been attempted before, and it didn't go too well.
Yeah, there's a track record there.
He basically had one really good game in a play against Philadelphia, snuck out a win, amazing, and then Joe Webb went back to being Joe Webb and was not really a guy that can play quarterback. Consequently, he was moved to wide receiver a couple of times. I mean, it's not really going to... Joe Webb is going to play badly as a quarterback. Maybe he won't play 5 interception badly, but it's not going to go well, and his ceiling is Tyrod Taylor. So,
by the way, Peterman's probably not going to throw 5 interceptions every single
no.
start that he
And
gets.
actually, I was reviewing that game,
Probably.
and like Joey Bosa caused like 4 of those. I mean, he hit him at least 3 times that caused the ball to come out somewhere other than where Peterman was aiming.
The Chargers have a legit pass defense.
Yeah, oh,
and pass
absolutely.
rush.
And Peterman, it was kind of weird. He did play that badly, but he didn't. All of those interceptions weren't on him. In fact, quite a number of them weren't on him. But he also had one on the sideline that was dropped and could have been a 6th, and he just straight dropped a shotgun snap for a fumble. So that didn't help his grade either.
Right.
So Peterman, I mean, Joe Webb is a bad quarterback. Everybody knows that. Going with him for the rest of the season, I just don't think is a good idea. So you're stuck with the idea of either we go back to Tyrod because he's clearly the best quarterback we have on the roster, or we're committed to this seeing what Peterman has thing. And you have to hope that it doesn't go as badly as it did this week.
Yeah, maybe commit to that at practice right now. Go back to Tyrod. Try to win some games. You're still in the mix. And Joe Webb's best fit is for that hypothetical team that just
the option
runs the college offense, right? And he's like the 3rd string guy when the first 2 guys get hurt.
Yeah.
That's your Joe Webb best case scenario. All right, do you want to skip the main event?
No.
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 We'll go to the Eagles question first, and then we'll.
You want to come back to this for the big finale?
Yeah, we'll.
Okay.
We'll circle back and have some call outs.
Okay.
Later on.
Fine.
On that. All right.
Fine.
This is from John. This is John McGee. That wrote this. Sure. I am a lone voice in the Eagles' wilderness who thinks Rasul Douglas is better than Jalen Mills. I was never a fan of his finger-wagging nonsense after his non-playmaking in his rookie year. From my visual watching of games, I've seen Rasul Douglas break up passes, and until recently, against lesser competition, I've seen Jalen Mills tackle after passes were completed, but not so many actual breakups or throws. He likes to take credit for sure, but come on. Okay. Anyway, the goal here is he's trying to say Rasul Douglas he thinks is better than Jalen Mills, who's the 65th ranked cornerback, according to PFF. And Douglas is 49th in his limited time as a rookie. The Eagles fan base seems to think one of these players is destined to be moved to safety. I think it should be Mills. Most think it should be Douglas. Am I wrong, or are they?
I think there's probably something to that. I don't think Jalen Mills is a great cornerback. He's definitely a way better cornerback than he was a year ago, but he's still given up like 500 yards, 50 catches already, 4 touchdowns. They're very similar in some of their coverage numbers. So both these guys are allowing a passer rating in the 70s when targeted. They differ dramatically, actually, in terms of average they've given up. Mills has given up 9.9 yards per reception, Douglas 13.5, but Douglas has given up a lower percentage of passes into his coverage, a completion percentage. So it's a bit hit and miss. Douglas does have one 75-yard 75-yard reception that's really dragging his numbers down a long way, but his coverage grade is definitely significantly higher than Mills, and I don't know that Mills has much higher of a ceiling than he's shown at this point. I mean, he's much better than he was last year, but he's still not exactly good.
Whereas I think Douglas does have room to improve. You know, when he played at West Virginia last year, he played off coverage about 85% of the time. Very little press coverage, yet he has this press coverage frame. And we were at the Senior Bowl. I was right there next to him on the sideline when he was, working in press, and he looked a little raw doing it, and one play would look bad and the next play would look good, and he does a lot of talking on the field. He was always talking with the refs, and he seemed like he was just experimenting with how much could he get away with. And he got, he was learning how much contact he could get away with. And I think there's room for him to improve as a press corner.
He is responsible for my favorite play of the entire NFL season so far this year.
Which one was that again?
I can't remember what the game was, but the very end of the game, there was it Kansas City? Very end of the game, somebody threw the ball into Douglas's coverage. Receiver kind of went down with it, and at the end of it was incomplete. Anyway, and the incompletion ended the game effectively.
Yeah.
So the official comes running into the play.
Oh, this one. Yeah.
Douglas is pointing at the official to give him the incomplete sign. Official finally gives him the waved incomplete sign, the crossing arm saying. Douglas turns around, wheels, and belts this receiver smack in the middle of the ass, like full on. Whoosh, and official doesn't even flinch. Like, you can't put your hands on an official or you get ejected.
You said he hit the receiver, but he slapped
the
ref.
official.
Right. Good job.
Exactly.
He was giving him the good job pat.
applauding official, slap on the ass. Official doesn't even flinch, just carries on giving his incomplete sign. Like, you're getting guys. I mean, Vontaze Burfict got ejected from the game for basically moving an official's arm from him who was trying to keep him away from somebody. Douglas full-on belts this guy in the ass at the end of the game.
No, but the ref knows what a good job what it means. The refs never get a pat in the ass. They never get that.
No, I'm
that
just saying.
Positive reinforcement.
Technically speaking, that's a flag and an ejection, and probably would have cost them that game. Still, it was awesome.
Are you trying to get a flag out of that?
I'm saying, if you're going to eject guys for touching an official, you probably shouldn't allow
That's
a
when
guy.
you're trying to push an official off you so that you can fight more. That's a lot different from
Not
giving
even-
kudos.
Not even just fight more, just get him off you.
He said, "Good job, ref. Good call."
I doubt he said that, but whatever he did, he hoofed him in the middle of the ass.
Man, you're starting to get soft now.
I'm all for it. I'm just saying, if you want to apply the rules consistently, that should probably be a penalty.
So anyway, I'd be all for giving Rasul a little bit more of a look, and maybe move. I like the way Mills has progressed at corner, and maybe work him at safety a little bit, and you get a little bit more versatility to that defense. I'm there. All right, here we go.
Yes.
Dear Sam and Steve, I am a proud Irishman like Sam, and I am following up my tweet, because he tweeted us this weekend, about getting Steve to attempt to pronounce some old classic Irish names. Irish names are difficult because they just make up the pronunciation. Because he says at the best of times, difficult at the best of times, but always a joy to hear Americans attempt to pronounce them. So here's a list of names to try.
My my favorite part about this is, so you didn't really know where to start with this. Give me some kind of basis of what the letters are. So I showed Steve the Irish name Eving and the spelling of Eving, and Steve is now even more lost than he was when he just saw the names that he was about to attempt to pronounce.
So if you're not Dan, by the way, Dan Thompson is the Irishman that wrote this.
Yes.
This sounds fake. You just made up a name, Dan Thompson.
Nothing to do with me.
So Dan Thompson's the one that sent this. If you're not Dan Thompson and you're not familiar with Gaelic names, the name Eving, just in your head, think about how you would spell that.
Well,
and then look at what the actual spelling that I'm looking at, which is AOIBHINN. It's like a Scrabble board just threw up letters in a random word,
which you thought was pronounced.
What did I call it?
Autobahn.
Autobahn. Yeah, that was the first thing. I'm going to approach this exercise like the exercise where you just eliminate all vowels and you just go with whatever triggers in your head, whatever you think it is.
All right, so we have what, 7 names. Let's go with the first one. This is spelled Niamh.
Namdi, as in Asamoah.
Perfect. Not quite. That is Neve.
Neve. Okay, yeah, the MH definitely makes a V sound.
Exactly.
Perfect.
And that should help you. So the next one is Siobhan.
All right, I'm going to go away from my initial guess of Sparrow, the classic pizza joint.
Yes. We looking for
Siobhan.
Oh, you're not that far off. Siobhan.
Oh, Siobhan. Okay, I'm getting this now. SIO is an sh sound, obviously.
Right. So this one is A with a father on the top. It's not actually on this, but that's how I'm pretty sure
this changes. This changes
so,
my.
Yeah, A with a father on the top. INE.
Annie.
Anya.
Anya, of course. What is this new one? I didn't get a chance to look at it.
You didn't put a guess on this one. So this is CAOIMHE.
This is Comia. As in Comia.
No, it's not. It's Quiva.
Quiva. Okay. Perfect.
All right, so this one you could be able to get. This is SAOIRSE.
I initially looked at it and thought a Corsi, as in Ernie.
And you haven't even spelt that right.
Well, I was spelling it out.
Yeah.
There you go, a Corsi. You spell it out, it's Siorse, so what would that really be in Gaelic, based off what I know? Sioshe. Soche. What is it?
Saoirse.
Oh, Saoirse. Isn't she the queen?
The Queen?
Yeah, Game of Thrones.
Yes. Well, no, that's Cersei, isn't it?
I know, it's close enough, Sam.
Yeah,
I get
sure.
it.
Oisin.
Oh, say can you see? That's
No.
what I wrote down.
No, yeah, that's not what it is.
OSHA.
OSHA? Isn't that like an oil something? That's
an acronym.
Yeah. No, it's not OSHA. It's Usheen.
Usheen, of course.
And the last one. This is the one that even people that know how it's supposed to be pronounced can't manage it. There's a rugby player with this name, and every commentating team in the world manages to screw it up. So Tadhg.
Taj Mahal.
No.
That's what I came up with.
No, it's not.
What is it supposed to be? Do you know the right one? What is it?
Tig.
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 Tadhg.
Yeah. So there's a rugby player named Tig Furlong.
Yeah, I mean, our entire Google Doc pretty much looks like a Scrabble board. Just threw up letters in random order, and then you called them Gaelic. And that's where we are right now.
I didn't call them Gaelic. That's just what it is.
And that is from Dan Thompson, and I'm going to pronounce his name Dan Thompson.
Yes, that one you've nailed.
Thank you. I wrote that down well. I don't understand this Gaelic language, Sam.
Apparently. No, you don't. You're not even close.
You know all these? How do you know all these?
By being Irish.
Oh.
There are people that are called those names.
Fascinating. Why would you have such screwed up pronunciations that don't make any sense?
I think because it comes from a language that isn't English.
Yeah.
So the letters are the same. But
yes, that was tough.
Same-ish.
If you have any other Gaelic names you want me to pronounce, we could always do that. That's going to wrap it up today. Do you have anything else you want to just send everyone off with before the Thanksgiving holiday? We hope we wanted to get this episode out before Thanksgiving, so you guys, if you're traveling or catching up on the Thursday games, going to see family, hoping you guys could listen. So today we're combining the mailbag and the quarterback edition. We'll be bringing Zach in here for some quick QB rundowns in a couple minutes. But anything else you want to wish your fellow Americans?
No, I think
happy
we're good. Just happy
anything?
Thanksgiving for everybody. And that's it. I will be celebrating with Eli Manning throws. You celebrate however you choose.
However you choose. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in to the Mailbag edition. And I'll be right back here with Zach Robinson discussing quarterbacks. And before he comes in, quick break to tell you that this episode is brought to you by PredictionMachine.com. Prediction Machine is a new generation in sports analytics where they play the games 50,000 times before they're actually played. Make better picks with proven data-driven analysis. Subscribe at PredictionMachine.com today and earn a $5 credit that can be used towards the purchase of any package. All right, we're tagging in Zach Robinson now, saying bye to Sam. Zach is joining me for the QB part of the episode. We usually do a full episode every week, but again, we are putting the two shows together. Zach, let's discuss some QBs. We're going to be quick. What'd you see this week from the QBs around the league after reviewing every single throw?
Not too bad of a week QB wise. You had kind of the guys that you'd like to see at the top with good games. You saw Brady, Matt Ryan the other night. Guys played great, and then you saw on the other side, some bad ones in there with Brett Hundley and a few other ones that we'll get into. But I think overall, pretty solid week, and the guys you expected to play well played pretty well.
Yeah, Matt Ryan we touched on in last week's episode. If you want to go back and hear our thoughts there, I think he just continued his strong play, and he's been one of our top-graded guys over the last 5 or 6 weeks, and throwing the ball as well as he did last year, I think, over these last few weeks, and whether it shows up statistically or not. So go check out that part of the Matt Ryan episode. But we want to start this week. We got a couple guys to talk about. Alex Smith we'll get in depth on, and Dak Prescott. We want to start with some Tom Brady and Carson Wentz discussion because it's kind of the talk of the league right now. Last week I put out one of our spider charts that breaks down where guys are grading, their deep pass grade and under pressure grade and against the blitz and intermediate and all those different things, and kind of compared Brady to Wentz using the PFF grading system. A lot of people are debating the two of them for MVP, and MVP is always a weird award because you got the word valuable in there, and there's definitely not a more valuable position than quarterback in all of sports, so it almost has to be a quarterback if you're going by value. But let's get into the discussion. Brady, Wentz this year, who's playing better, why, What are they doing differently? Why would you take one over the other? Let's just dive right into the Brady-Wentz debate, Zach.
I think, and this is nothing to take away from Carson Wentz. He's had a phenomenal year, and I think exceeded a ton of people making that big jump in the second season. But if you're looking throw for throw, and it really has not even been close in my mind with how well Tom Brady compared to Wentz and what they've been asked to do, what they're doing. I think a lot of it gets, with the Carson Wentz, obviously his team is playing exceptionally well, both sides of the football, and he's been a huge part of that. But when you just look at them throw for throw, you can look at basically every statistic out there, and Wentz, besides leading in touchdown passes, Tom Brady's got the leg up in just about every area. The one thing that keeps coming up for me is just the plays under pressure, and I think with Carson Wentz we see these splash highlight plays that everybody gets enamored with, and they get played on highlight reels over and over and over, and you kind of think that that's been him the whole season. He's certainly had a bunch of those plays, but Tom Brady on the other end has had an exceptional year under pressure, and you just kind of compare those two guys just in that stat alone, because we see guys are playing under pressure a third of the time, and it's a very obviously a tough thing to do. But Tom Brady leads the NFL in passer rating under pressure and all these things. I think that kind of is a huge separator in my mind at the moment, where you see the splash plays from Wentz, but the throw for throw consistency and what Brady's been able to do with maybe less guys around him has been exceptional all year.
Yeah, Brady's work under pressure is really ridiculous. He has a 110.8 passer rating under pressure, which is almost identical to his 111 passer rating under no pressure. The next closest passer rating under pressure is 87.3. That's actually Marcus Mariota. So we're talking about, 23 plus point difference between Brady and the next closest guy just in under pressure passer rating. He's our top graded quarterback under pressure. He's our top graded quarterback overall. But you could see it the other day, just the ability, with guys in his face to make throws, especially early in the season. He was getting hit. His numbers, we pulled him out for an ESPN piece a couple weeks ago. His numbers when he gets hit are incredible. Don't have them off the top of my head, but just, most guys, the passer rating drops to like 50, and he's up in the 80s or 90s when they're actually getting hit and knocked to the ground. So I'm with you. Wentz has shown some of those splash plays. That play he made against Carolina on the Thursday night game, where he just maneuvered the pocket and kind of chucked it to the side of the end zone on the wheel route. I mean, that was special stuff. But for every one of those, there's also, Brady's work early in the season, which, let's not forget, he had that game-winning throw against the Houston Texans under pressure, getting crushed, where he back shoulders it to Cooks about 35 plus yards down the field, just making incredible throws under pressure and when he's getting hit. So anything else as far as what Brady's asked to do versus what Wentz is asked to do? I think a lot of Eagles fans have come up and said, hey, Wentz is doing this pre-snap work, and they're trusting him a lot. And I do think that there's an element to what they've done schematically, putting a little bit more on his plate. But I know you're also a big fan of what they've done as far as the coaching staff and building that scheme around Wentz's skill set.
Yeah, it's an entirely different offense and what they're required to do, and with Carson Wentz in that offense, we've seen heavy RPO game, quick game, great mix of play action, misdirection, kind of fool you a little bit more, and not really going to attack you with multiple concepts and multiple layered routes and pure progression reads that we see with Tom Brady and the Patriots, and that's just the difference between Brady and Wentz. As Brady is a much more consistent pure progression passer and can find the open man more consistently, and Wentz he's got a great arm, and he can kind of maybe not work through progressions as well, but can fit some tight window stuff in there and try to make it work. So I think that's the biggest difference just schematically is you've got a lot more that you can do with Brady from a pass game perspective and what type of routes you can do and all the reads that you can do. But Carson Wentz is making that offense go, and he's very, very good. You mentioned pre-snap. I mean, just getting the ball out of his hand accurately, knowing where to go with the football before it's even snapped. So both guys have their strengths, weaknesses. I just think when you look at scheme-wise, Brady's asked to do a ton more at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, just to use a couple other PFF numbers to describe these guys. Big time throw percentage, of course. This used to be the big time throw cast. Those are our highest graded throws in PFF terms. Brady number 2 in big time throw percentage in the entire NFL. Wentz is number 5 right now, and he's continued to make, as you mentioned, those tight window throws and downfield throws. That's been a big improvement. And then in positively graded throws, and I do think there's this element of watching quarterbacks, and it's like you can deal with some negatives, you can deal with some misses here and there, as long as they're moving the chains and finding the open man and making those positive throws. And that's where Wentz is doing a great job. Brady's number 2 in percentage of positively graded throws. Wentz is number 3. So they are right there together. I think the difference in the two, just again using PFF terms where we're grading every single play, is in avoiding those negatives. Brady, once again this year, last year he was our top graded guy. This year, by far, our top graded guy. And a big part of it is he's just not missing throws. He is second in avoiding negatively graded throws, so just pure misses. He's just, he's making sure that he completes those passes that are there, whether they're easy or not. And once again, Brady has always been one of the best in the league at avoiding turnover-worthy throws, always has a low interception total. 2 interceptions this year. He's gotten away with a couple passes, but in recent weeks certainly taking care of the ball much better. 4th lowest turnover-worthy play percentage. That would be your big difference with Wentz. Wentz is 14th in negatively graded throws, and he's actually 25th in highest percentage or avoiding turnover-worthy throws. So he's had a little bit of interception luck, especially early in the season. I think Wentz has been better in recent weeks, but there was some bad fumbles early in the year and a little bit of interception luck for Wentz early in the season as well. So if you're just in grading terms separating the two, it's those negatively graded throws I think that are separating Brady and Wentz at this point.
I agree. Yeah, the fumbles kind of and the late in the down poor decisions early in the season I think are what are still a little bit in your mind with Wentz and realizing this is the entire season body of work, and Brady's been more consistent with that. We talked about the under pressure stuff, and Brady's in terms of just sheer completion percentage under pressure. Brady's at 60.6% completion percentage. Wentz is at 37.3% completion percentage under pressure. Obviously, a huge difference there. Yards per attempt wise under pressure, Brady's at 9.1. Wentz is at 5.5 yards per attempt. So you can kind of split hairs with some of their stuff and the big time throws and those things, but the under pressure and then the just sheer positively graded throws, like you're saying, is the biggest difference I think in those two guys right now.
Yeah, and just to clarify on some of that pressure stuff, pressure is, we track our own numbers, and I know there's a lot of different numbers floating out there. Pressure is a result. That is, something that happens on a play, the quarterback being moved off the spot, being affected essentially on the throw, or being hit while throwing. Being sacked, of course, is in there as well. And then the blitz is more of a play call. That's not always just sending 5, but essentially sending 1 more than expected, I think would be the simplest way to explain our definition. So, sometimes blitz and pressure are used synonymously, and we use them differently. Pressure is a result of something that happens on a play. Blitz is a play call. And the under pressure numbers, when the quarterback is actually affected by the defense, yes, that is absolutely where I'd say, and the numbers would show, and the grades would show that Brady certainly has the advantage over Wentz so far this season. So anything else you want to add into this debate? Because I do think the first thing that you said was a lot of the, the splash and the highlight plays that Wentz has, which I agree, man. When I first saw him come out, I think I made the statement to Sam on one of our podcasts. I said, if you look at what his top-end season's going to look like, it's going to be, low 60% completions and 7.5, 8 yards per attempt and just some big plays and using that big arm to drive down the field. That's what his stat line's starting to look like. Yeah. He's under 60% completions, 59.7. He's 7.6 yards per attempt, has the huge touchdown total at 25. And, that's starting to look like what I thought maybe top-end Wentz could look like coming out with the big arm and some of that athleticism.
I agree, and that's when he's at his best. Is when, he's the ultimate timing and rhythm thrower, and then when you have a good mix of play actions that they have mixed with their RPO and quick game, he's able to feel comfortable and in rhythm on those deep throws, and he throws the ball very, very well down the field. So I'm with you. I think that's kind of where you've seen him be at his best is, the quick game, and then he's able to stretch defenses. We've seen teams play a ton of man-to-man coverage. We talked about it in weeks past. They're playing about 50% of just straight man-to-man coverage against these guys, and with his pinpoint accuracy and able to pick a guy and just kind of make it work with his arm, you're seeing a lot of those big plays down the field.
One last number for Wentz in a place where he's made massive improvement. Last year when we went back and charted ball location and accuracy and really broke down quarterbacks every which way when it came to accuracy, Wentz was not great as far as the intermediate throws go, and especially over the middle of the field. His intermediate middle of the field throws this year, in between the numbers at 10 to 19 yards, great numbers. 27 for 38 for 394, 5 touchdowns. That's a passer rating of 144.1. So that is a place where I think last year he was throwing the dig route, right? We always talk about He was leaving them high. He had a few intercepted. Last year his passer rating in that range was 79. So it's from 79 to 144, almost doubled his passer rating this year. So if you're looking for just one particular place where he's improved, just those intermediate throws in between the numbers have been night and day this year compared to last.
Yeah, that's a great stat. I mean, he's and you can see it in the confidence that he has with those throws. Because it seems like they've got a backside dig coming into his vision. Obviously not on every throw, but on a lot of those throws, and that's what you saw. You saw him hit it the other night. The one under pressure, he finds the backside dig and nails it over the middle. So that's an area, typically that 10 to 19 middle in between the numbers, that's an area where Tom Brady dominates. All the great consistently great quarterbacks are able to play in between the numbers there at intermediate. So that's a big time stat for him, and he's played well.
All right, so that's our take on the MVP race. I think we would both take Brady. Tons of credit for Wentz and what he's done. The one other thing I keep pointing back to as well, Wentz has the number one pass blocking offensive line in pass blocking efficiency, and that defense has been outstanding. So if you're talking about going back to that whole valuable deal, the supporting cast in Philadelphia has just been outstanding. That is a full, complete team so far this season. The other guy, one of the other guys we wanted to talk about, Alex Smith of the Kansas City Chiefs, who was in the MVP race through the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, and we've seen a bit of a drop-off in his play. Early in the year, the narrative was that conservative Alex Smith has become one of the best players under pressure, throwing down the field. He's extending plays. He was playing with unbelievable confidence. And the question was, can he maintain it? It's not something that we've seen him sustain throughout his career. We've seen flashes of it. It may have been the best 5 or 6 game sample that we have seen of his entire career, but since week 6, so after weeks 1 to 5, I think he was either second or third in PFF grades. He was right up there, right behind Brady, right up there with Drew Brees at number 2 or 3. But since week 6, the number 27 graded quarterback in PFF terms. And I can't help but wonder if that had been flipped, if he had started the season at 27 and then went on a hot streak, how the narrative may have shifted. But what are your thoughts on Smith and what we've seen in recent weeks compared to what he was earlier in the season?
I think it really just comes down to his arm is just not at the same level as it was at the beginning of the season, just from pure strength, from how the ball is coming out, how he's throwing the ball under pressure, how he's throwing the ball down the field. Those are the biggest things. Like you mentioned, his under pressure and then his deep ball passer rating. The first 5 weeks, he was first in the NFL in deep ball passer rating and under pressure. So we've seen those take a serious hit the past 4 weeks or so, 4 or 5 weeks. The under pressure numbers have gone from 135.7 first in the NFL to 48.6 since the week 6 under pressure. And I think it just goes. I think you'd be on board with saying he's never been elite arm talent. And we've seen, in the past where as the season's gone on, maybe his arm has deteriorated a little bit and lost a little bit of zip. And I think that's definitely been the case. Is just the arm strength and zip and fundamentals just aren't the exact same and aren't as crisp, and the ball's not coming out. And I think that ultimately leads to him losing confidence that he can make those throws that we saw at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. So I watched the Dallas game pretty closely. Week 9, that was 2 games ago for him. Very uncomfortable in the pocket from the beginning of that game. Even plays where he wasn't under pressure early in the season, the things that we were complimenting him for, I thought he did a great job of. We always talk about Aaron Rodgers and what Brady has done and later in his career as far as extending plays, and of course the Deshaun Watsons and Russell Wilsons and some of those other guys that that's a huge part of their game. They do it all the time, but Smith had started to learn how, my first read might not be there. Maybe I'm not going to throw it away this time. I'm actually going to extend the play and find the open man. He was doing that a ton those first 5 weeks. Just great feel. That Houston game, Sunday Night Football, national audience, it felt like every key third down was Alex Smith breaking the pocket, finding the open man, and just making things happen. I don't know if he doesn't have that same level of comfort in the pocket, and I thought the Dallas game 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now showed that early in the season, early in the game, just happy feet and just wasn't comfortable from the get-go. That's the biggest thing I've seen, I think, since early in the season. I
agree. Yeah, I think that started that game, and then you could tell this week, the first 2-3 plays of the game, you were kind of like, oh, this is the same story here as far as just watching his feet and being a little bit quick triggered to take off and a little fidgety. So, whether it's a confidence thing and his arm, just whatever it is, it has not been good. They've they're not pushing the ball down the field. You look at the last 3 games, and they are. He's one of the lowest graded passers getting the ball down the field, 20-plus yard throws the last 3 games. So when you lose that element and he's not extending the play like you mentioned and struggling under pressure, you're getting that kind of steady regression that we've seen.
Yeah, and that might just be what it is. It's very tough for a quarterback to completely change what they are. I think at this point in their career, I think it was a great story. And look, I'm not writing Alex Smith off by any means. I think he's just kind of regressed back into what Alex Smith is. And when we look at the PFF grading breakdown, overall, there's a couple things that are still great positives. He's 4th still in big time throw percentage. But to your point, a big chunk of that happened early in the season. Those were the early downfield big time throws. He's still generally taking care of the ball. He had one unlucky interception on Sunday, but also had that terrible, disastrous one that essentially blew the game for them. Even though they ended up, he throws an interception in a tie game late, 6-6 game late. The Giants take the lead. He did drive them down to tie it up. But again, just an untimely bad interception. But overall, Alex Smith 4th in avoiding turnover-worthy plays. The number that stands out to me, though, 4th lowest percentage of positively graded throws. So just all positives. So he's got the big-time throws. He's got some of those big plays that have been either manufactured or just, him doing a nice job of taking some chances earlier in the year. But those easy positives, those move the chains throws, the 10-yard out and the 14-yard, 15-yard dig, not hitting those, just not making those throws. So it's kind of the old Alex Smith of make the expected throws. There's a lot of screens mixed into that offense, and just one of the lowest percentages of positively graded plays. What are your thoughts on the scheme that it was this really healthy combination of some college-y type concepts and misdirection and shovel options and all these different things that seem to keep teams off balance early in the year? And then when you paired that with Alex Smith's deep passing, it's like, okay, this offense is unstoppable. But since that Pittsburgh game in Week 6, it just hasn't been the case for the most part.
Yeah, and I don't think they've really, they're not changing that much. But I do think that Andy Reid can see that Alex Smith is just simply not throwing the ball as well down the field. And you're seeing more of a, kind of old Alex Smith when he gets into these lulls of, quick, a lot of screens you mentioned, a lot of quick game. because the down the field concepts, he's not throwing them as accurately, and like you mentioned with his being a little fidgety in the pocket, he's not giving those plays time to develop. So I do think that Andy Reid has seen that in his quarterback and maybe dialed it back. We saw him hit. How many times we see Travis Kelce down the seam the first 5 weeks of the season, and we just haven't seen that as much. I think he hit one last week to him, kind of on the right corner. But in terms of just stretching the ball vertically in the middle of the field, they have not hit those same shots that they did early on.
Yeah, those early seam shots to Kelce, layered passes over the linebackers, in between the safeties. There were a lot of them, and those were nice. He had a great feel for those throws early in the season, and again, we always lamented the fact that Alex Smith would not take chances on some deep passes. If it's not perfectly clean, he's not going to do it. Sam likes to call him pathologically conservative, but all of a sudden, 6 weeks into the year, 5 weeks into the year, it was like, no, it's okay. He's taking those chances. He has changed. And again, I don't know if this is it an Andy Reid thing? Is it Alex also regressing into more of a conservative mindset? How do they get out of this funk, I guess is the question. And my preseason prediction of Kansas City at some point getting fed up with Alex Smith and going to Patrick Mahomes, just for a playmaking presence. Is that closer to being in play at this point, or you just have to roll with Alex Smith because, hey, those first 5 weeks, if you can recapture that, then you're a Super Bowl contender once again?
As much as I want to see Patrick Mahomes in there, we are both big fans of his game.
Yeah.
Keeping Alex Smith in the game is as the starter is the way to go. But they've got to find more creative ways to get the ball. To guys like Tyreek Hill, I don't think he's been utilized as well, and they got to just get back to finding creative ways. If Alex Smith's arm is not an issue, but it's not as explosive and have as much energy on the ball as it did early in the season. So they got to get a little more creative, and they play the Bills coming up. They got the Jets, the Raiders. So some games to potentially get back where they did at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, so those are three defenses that are not, especially the Bills and Raiders, definitely not trending the right way. Have been pretty well picked apart over these last few weeks. Again, so I would roll with Smith as well. I would never. I said it on the other review podcast. I'm not ready to call for Mahomes. I would just be fascinated to see what would happen if the script flipped a little bit. And again, Smith was the 27th ranked quarterback after 5 weeks of the season, when that's all you have as a sample size. And then he went on a hot streak for 5 weeks to kind of, bring himself back up toward the top of the league. If that was switched, would there be rumblings early on that, hey, Alex Smith might be on his way out? It happened to be switched. There's still like a little bit of leftover narrative of new Alex Smith, and now he's throwing downfield, and he's unbelievable under pressure. Like, there's still some of that left over from those first 5 weeks, even though it just hasn't been the same since in the last 5 games. So it's really been a tale of 2 5-game stretches for Alex Smith. One where he's the number 2 or 3 quarterback in the NFL, one where he's number 27. What does this next 6 games look like for him? I think there's a lot of questions still, and of course Kansas City's still in very much in control of the AFC West. So you're going to roll with Smith. I would too. What would it take? Would it take another game or two of what we saw on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it would take 2-3 games. These next 3 games I mentioned, very expect to win those games. If he were to struggle in these games and they're just messing around on offense, not able to, then I can maybe get it for the last 2 games, but it would have to take some serious meltdowns and some late game stuff or something along those lines. But next year, man, I'm fired up to see some Patrick Mahomes. I hope that's kind of the direction they go, because we've seen Alex Smith. He's been able to make a ton of plays. He's a great player, but just you're kind of capped out at what he is, and maybe it's held him back to a certain extent.
Yeah, we'll see. The offseason's going to be awesome. I keep saying it all the time. We'll figure out. We'll have many discussions on where the best fit will be for Alex Smith. I'm not saying. I mean, Kansas City, I assume, would be going with Patrick Mahomes. They invested in him, and then you have Alex Smith maybe landing in Jacksonville, or maybe he ends
go.
up in Minnesota. Who knows what happens up there. I mean, there's so many different crazy scenarios for the QB carousel this offseason. Another quarterback where things haven't gone great the last couple weeks, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. We saw him against Philadelphia on Sunday night try to go head-to-head with Carson Wentz. When people talk about Dak versus Wentz, I feel like as far as who's better, these debates are going to rage on for the next 10 to 15 years. Who's better, Dak versus Wentz? I think the answer is going to lie very heavily on what their situation is in a given year. I mean, Dak was clearly the better quarterback last year, and Wentz is clearly the better quarterback this year. I think there's no debate between those two things, but clearly the situation has been much different for each guy. Whoever's been in the better situation as far as run game, supporting cast, offensive line, has been the better quarterback. What have you seen from Dak these last few weeks with no Ezekiel Elliott, 2 straight games of no Tyron Smith? 2 weeks ago was just a disaster of left tackle play by Chaz Green against the Atlanta Falcons, where Dak couldn't really do a whole lot. What have you seen from him when he hasn't had this pristine situation around him as far as offensive line and run game and everything else?
Yeah, you're seeing some of the stuff that you saw in college where he didn't play behind a great offensive line, didn't have a ton of great playmakers around him. He still had a solid senior season, but you saw games in there that were kind of bad pocket games. Whether he's been, obviously the Atlanta game could be thrown out a little bit, but he still is having some plays where he can, slide and maneuver around, and we have seen him do that. But I think, there's times where he does get a little undisciplined in the pocket and sliding too much and sliding, into pressure at times. So as much as there's been issues along the offensive line, I don't think he's played as disciplined from the pocket. I don't think he's really, seeing the game quite at the same level, whether that's just a total confidence thing with the guys up front and the confidence in the guys around him. It's definitely been, different since week 6 in terms of just passer rating under pressure. Since week 6, he's got a 28.1 passer rating under pressure, which is the second lowest in the NFL behind ahead of Trevor Siemian. So there's been play in the pocket that we've seen kind of in college what it was, and you look at plays that maybe you magnify too much when you're scouting a guy in Alabama and some of these games, but that's kind of what it's looked like, especially last week and the week before.
Yeah, so that's what you and I kept going back and forth on, like, hey, he didn't look great in college. You kept saying, hey, there were traits and pocket movement and some things that, some other college quarterbacks don't do. And we've been on this podcast plenty, just praising Dak and some of the things that you say as a quarterback aren't as easy as he makes them look, from checking down to normally handling pressure pretty well and sidestepping a rusher here and there to make a pass or whatever it might be. But at the same time, we kept saying in college, hey, he just wasn't productive week in, week out, and he had a disastrous game against Alabama, and he had some poor decisions that it seemed like he got away with, and then last year he kind of takes the league by storm. So is this a little bit more of a regression into what he was, or are we just finding it's still very difficult to find Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, that holy grail of quarterback, and the rest of these guys, the Daks, the Wentzes, maybe even Andrew Luck. Maybe Luck is up in that top tier, I don't know, but are the rest of these guys just going to be products of their environment? And I don't want to use that in a derogatory term. We're talking about above average NFL quarterbacks, but as far as their production in a given year, just very dependent on their ecosystem, so to speak, and what's around them.
I think so, to a certain extent. I think with Dak, you've seen more consistent than not in terms of being able to be at, eventually a level of, I'm not going to say Brady and Rodgers, but just maybe that notch below and a consistently top 5 guy year in and year out. But I more so think that this is just a little blip in his game for the time being, and just needs to get a little rhythm back, get some flow back in his game, and get his confidence back more than anything. Because when your confidence is down, whether you're not confident in the guys in front of you, your instincts are slower. They're not as good. And I think that's kind of what we've seen is just overall confidence-wise hasn't been quite the same and as consistent as we've seen. We're not far away from, debating Dak and Wentz, I guess, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago where we would take Dak,
Oh, yeah.
hands down over Wentz. And I still do feel that way, but I'm completely with you on the product of the environment. And, Wentz has just got some more good things going around him right now.
Yeah, so a couple things there. I'm with you too. I'm not ready to mail it in on Dak either. There's too much good tape out there to say, hey, this Chaz Green 6-sack game is going to tarnish everything that Dak has done to this point. And our guy Mike Renner, as you were saying that, I was surfing and checking Twitter right now, and I'm seeing this retweeted onto my timeline. Mike Renner wrote a piece today that said exactly what you said. Without Tyron Smith, without that comfort level, he's not handling pressure well. I think if you put Dak into a situation where he steps into the game comfortably, he handles pressure okay. I mean, even last year,
Right.
as much as you said, offensive line's great, running game's great, when he did face pressure, he handled it extremely well, and even this year there's been times where you've seen it. But when you're always looking over your shoulder, and that Atlanta game, just a disaster. I mean, he literally had to look over his shoulder every single time at a guy in his face. There's only so much that you can do. So I'm not ready to write him off either. But you also have to acknowledge that as these things have kind of fallen apart around him, he's had some struggles. And I think my big question for Dak, can he be the guy? Can he be the guy beyond, just the guy that is working off play action with Zeke and sitting behind the offensive line? Can he be the guy that goes and wins the game for you by throwing 40 or 45 times? And I think that still might be a question. I don't know if he needs to be that guy, but I think he's capable of being that guy. With his short area accuracy and everything, Zach, he's capable of being that guy that just runs the short and intermediate game all day and just dictates in Brady-ish like fashion.
I'm with you. The guy's ability to get through progressions cleanly, that's why it's been weird the past couple of weeks, just passing up number one and not getting the ball out of his hand and playing that disciplined football that, like a Tom Brady and just nickel and diamond and then being able to make plays on the move outside the pocket and those types of things. It just hasn't been at the same type of level. But I personally think that this is a guy that has the potential to win a couple Super Bowls down the line. I mean, I think that highly of his game. And I just think this is more of a confidence and kind of get back into what he is and just really, taking what's there and just getting the ball out of his hands and just moving the ball efficiently like we normally see him do.
Yeah, so we had a couple questionable passes against the Eagles, but Dak is still 7th lowest in the NFL in turnover-worthy play percentage. I still want to see a little bit more downfield passing because I think when he does unleash it, he's pretty accurate down there. I think a little bit more aggressiveness. Perhaps that's paired up with the offensive line, but even when Tyron Smith's there, it's not like Dallas was taking a ton of shots down the field. I'm not saying we're going to completely change what we said a couple weeks ago, Dak versus Wentz. Is it fair to say, though, year to year, the perception on these guys is going to change? I mean, I compare to Luck and Wilson. There's been a lot of Luck-Wilson debates through the years, especially Seahawks and Colts fans. They love it. There are certain years where Luck looks better than Wilson. Other years, I think Wilson looks better than Luck, even though they're doing it differently as far as style goes. Is that a fair assessment on these guys, or are you going to stick with what you know about them?
I think so, and I think that if all the situations were equal, you're going to get very similar play. I think if more bad things are around Carson Wentz, it could look worse for him than Dak. And if more good things are both around him, then they're obviously going to be great. And Carson Wentz, in just sheer terms of arm talent, has more arm talent, so maybe he has better years when it's all clean around him. But I do think Dak's ability to just kind of get through progressions, no matter the defensive look and those things, I think that is set up for things that are happening right now where it's been a little bit tougher and he's struggled some, but he still is. Like you said, he still is playing some pretty good football, and they still got a long way to go with the rest of the year. See if he can kind of iron out and really shoulder the load and get things done on his own.
Oh, fascinating way to break it down. So if both Dak and Wentz have great pieces around them or good pieces around them, maybe Wentz has a little bit more upside, but if they both have bad pieces around them, maybe Dak can mitigate that a little bit better. A great, nice gray way of putting it, right? Just sit in the middle, give them both credit. But no, I think that's good analysis instead of just, no, this guy's better and that's it, and we're just going to rank guys and call it a day. Good stuff. Let's fly through the league really quick. You always send me messages as you're watching all of these quarterbacks. You did not send me a good message when watching Brett Hundley. You were not impressed with Brett Hundley's play this weekend.
It was a bad week, and we've seen, weeks pile up where it hasn't been great. But last week he was able to make some big throws in the fourth quarter that was able to, get him out of that rut that he was playing the rest of the game with. And he made some huge, huge throws to win that game. And then you look back to this week, and it was just a bad week. Pre-snap processing, post-snap processing is a big issue, and you're seeing him leave a lot of plays on the table that he needs to get the ball out of his hands, and then trying to play this kind of Aaron Rodgers style. He's been sitting back watching him, and I think that's almost hurt him because he is not that guy. He's not the guy that's going to wow you with some of those big plays that Rodgers can make. So it was not a great week. I think he was definitely the lowest graded quarterback of the week, and took a giant step back.
Let's quickly touch on this Tyrod Taylor, Nathan Peterman thing. Sam and I discussed it at length because he's got quite a passion for Tyrod and his ability to play in the NFL. Obviously, Peterman's debut and 5 interceptions on 16 dropbacks was not a good start.
It was not good. I think, in terms of what they are as an offense and how they're built, they're not built for a Nathan Peterman to come in and play the game and the timing rhythm. They don't have the offensive line. They don't have the playmakers around him to play that style that McDermott wants to play. He's a disciplined guy and he wants to play that way, but they need a playmaker back there, and Tyrod obviously makes a ton of plays. He's safe with the ball, and the decision to go with him was, in the situation that they're at right now, was obviously head scratching. Everybody saw that, but we'll see kind of what they do from here. But they're not built to play the Nathan Peterman style that he is best suited to play right now.
Marcus Mariota, Tennessee Titans, coming off a rough game against the Pittsburgh Steelers statistically. One stat that continues to stand out about Mariota's game, his work with play action versus non-play action. What are you seeing there from Mariota?
That's been the biggest difference. He's still grading well. The stats have been really misleading. He's had some bad interception luck, but the 134.4 passer rating using play action, second in the NFL, 11.8 yards per attempt, first in the NFL. Then you go down to his passer rating on non-play action. He's at 62.1, which sits him just ahead of Deshaun Kaiser for second lowest in the NFL. So huge discrepancy there. Getting a lot of big plays off play action, but simply dropping back and throwing the football when he needs to has not been that great.
Yeah, and that's rough. That's usually an indicator of must-pass situations struggling, and the play action thing can fluctuate just a little bit. Those numbers are reminiscent of 2012 RG3. That was RG3's rookie season.
Ooh, yeah.
He was number 1 passer rating on play action and last on non-play action. Last guy I want to touch on, Drew Brees, whose grading profile, as well as he played down the stretch on Sunday, and I'll add the caveat here. He had a game-winning drive that started with a game-ending interception. So he throws a game-ending interception. It gets negated by a penalty that had nothing to do with the pick. And then he drives the Saints down the field for the game-tying drive. So did a fantastic job down the stretch. His grading profile, though, is that of a game manager, so to speak, 30th in the NFL in positively graded throws, percentage of positively graded throws, but the lowest percentage of negatively graded throws. He's just not missing a whole lot, but also not adding the same level of positives that he has in the past. What are your thoughts on Brees and what we've seen either this week or just this whole season?
Yeah, I think that's a great stat to sum it up because, the number of positively graded throws, the throws, 10, 20 yards down the field, you're not seeing as much, but they throw a ton of screens and they get the ball out of his hand that way. And he has still hit big-time throws down the field. He's one of the best seam throwers. We saw him hit a number of seams last week and really the whole season stretching that part of the field. So it's kind of one way or the other. He's dinking it around here and throwing screens, and then he's still able to get the ball down the field with some big-time throws.
Yeah, he's had some just bad floated deep passes every now and
Yeah.
again that I think you and I are both like, wait, what is this? Why is this?
Is his
pass?
arm all right? Yeah.
Yeah, is his arm
Yeah.
okay? But then he'll have enough passes where it's like, okay, he's got enough zip here. So it just seems like every now and again the ball just isn't coming out of his hand right. I wouldn't say that it's like, hey, he must have a shoulder, he must have something. But there's enough of those.
I thought initially maybe his elbow was. We talked about a couple weeks ago when he had the sleeve. I thought
He had the
maybe,
sleeve.
'cause there
That's
was
true.
There was a few games where, like you said, that thing. Even on completions, it was very kind of Peyton Manning-esque in his final years of the ball. He just was simply not spinning that well.
Yeah, so it's just something to keep an eye on with Breeze, especially as the season unfolds. But I think Sunday showed that if you do have to put the ball in his hands to go win you a game, he's still capable. So,
oh man, he was awesome. Yeah.
Still one of our top graded guys. But again, I'm fascinated in how he's doing it. He has a high percentage of big time throws, low percentage of just overall positively graded throws, and the lowest percentage of negative. So just not making a ton of mistakes or not missing a whole lot of throws. All right, Zach, that'll do it for us. You have a wonderful Thanksgiving. If you guys are listening to this
you too, man.
Before Thanksgiving. Yeah, Zach, you traveling, doing a little traveling, heading back home?
Doing some traveling, heading back to Denver. So hoping to get some snow or something to make it feel Dallas. I mean, it's about 75 degrees here every day, so I'm looking forward to maybe a seasonal change here up in Denver.
I hope you get some snow. And did you train in Mexico to prepare for that, to get ready for the high altitude of Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I hopped on with the Pats. We were up at the Air Force Academy, and I'm very well ready to go for the trip there.
That's why I think you do a great job here. Your preparation is second to none. So you have a great Thanksgiving. We hope everybody out there also has a great Thanksgiving. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow along with us every single week. We've got one more big episode this week, the Week 12 preview. So be sure to do that and then get to ProFootballFocus.com for PFF Edge and Elite. Get $10 off if you use the promo code PFF10. That works for any of our products on the site. All right, guys, happy Thanksgiving, and we will talk to you next time.